Dear Jimmy, once upon a time there was a boy called the Buddymeister. Remember him? He tried as best as he could, but still, it wasn't enough for Jimmy. So he left. He left to change the world. He found new hope and people that really like him, that don't look down on him or throw him out or punch him. And although Jimmy did all these things to him, he still loves him, and he will never forget him.
Who's this guy?
Servus Freunde, my name is Jimmy Cage.
And I'm Deniz, the Buddymeister.
We have reviewed more than 400 Indian movies on the channel, and today we want to talk about the 2003 Hindi and English language film Hazaaron Khwaishein Aisi. Now, before we get into it, let me explain how we made that choice. A long time ago, I bought this book here, Studying Indian Cinema by Omar Ahmed, which is actually more about Hindi cinema, or at least with a heavy focus on Hindi cinema. It has 14 chapters in which different aspects are talked about by focusing on one specific movie. And as a matter of fact, we have now covered all of them except the Bimal Roy classic Do Bighha Zamin, which we will watch in the future for sure. The title of the chapter for this movie is Revolutionaries, but I didn't look that up before watching it, and honestly I was expecting a very different film. Having seen this poster, I assumed this would be kind of a slick, modern, neo-noir. But it's not.
No, it's not. Hazaaron Khwaishein Aisi, which translates to 1,000 Wishes Like This, a title that stems from a poem by the Urdu poet Mirza Ghalib, is actually a political period drama. And I agree, the poster is totally misleading and has nothing to do with the movie. It's terrible. Anyway, the movie was written by 4 people, including Sudhir Mishra, who also directed it.
It had its premiere at the end of 2003, and it was shown at several international festivals where it gathered many positive reviews. But it wasn't until 2005 that it was finally released in India. In the book, I read that it did rather disappointing at the box office. But if the budget and box office on Wikipedia are correct, it really didn't do that bad compared to what it cost.
It is a political film covering a very specific, very tumultuous time in India, and coming from an outsider perspective that can be quite challenging to take in, because we simply don't have the knowledge to put everything in context. And yet the movie is doing a fine job depicting this particular time and place and the atmosphere and feeling.
Having seen several hundred Indian movies by now, and also a few that deal with similar topics, it was quite interesting how one's own knowledge grows and how you can make more and more connections. For example, we can now easily and immediately recognize important portraits on the wall, like the freedom fighter Bhagat Singh, for example.
Or the movie poster for Sanjir.
Even though we still haven't seen that one, but yeah. Of course, it's very flawed to gain knowledge primarily through movies, but that's why I also always enjoy to read up on the material on Wikipedia, for example. And a few years ago, I wouldn't have had a single clue about the so-called emergency or the Naxalite movement. And now I at least know some things about it.
Hazaaron Khwaishein Aisi tells the story of 3 friends and how their lives are shaped and influenced by the difficult times in which they live. I think the story starts in 1969. We don't exactly know where it ends, but it also takes place in 1973 and 1975. I guess at the end of the movie we're at the end of the 70s, but like I said, we don't really know. It's a political movie, but it's also kind of a classic love triangle that feels very real.
In a way, it felt like an independent, more real, less commercial version of the Amir Khan movie Rang de Basanti.
Yes, absolutely. And it also reminded me of the Malayalam movie Left, Right, Left, a movie that we watched way too early on our journey through the world of Indian movies. But I guess that again emphasizes how much we've learned over the years.
Yeah, it also made me think of Satyajit Ray's The Adversary, where Dhritiman Chatterjee plays kind of a mix of the 3 characters from this movie.
Let's talk about them. We have Siddharth, played by K.K. Menon, a driven revolutionary who dreams of ending caste-based discrimination and corruption. Ultimately, he wants to improve society. Then we have Vikram, played by Shaini Ahuja, a middle-class boy who dreams of becoming a wealthy businessman. And the third person in this love triangle is Geeta, played by Chitrangada Singh. She's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, not knowing what exactly she wants in life. Their paths separate after being in college in Delhi, but they cross again numerous times in the following years.
At first, I was a bit confused by the movie's storytelling. At times, it felt as if certain scenes were cut off too abruptly or cut into too late, even as if small parts of the narrative were missing completely. It spent several years, and it took me a few seconds every now and then to reorient myself where we are exactly and what happened to our three protagonists. There were also quite a few fade-ins and fade-outs that seemed a bit rough. But honestly, as the movie progressed, I more and more liked this approach. With a runtime of 1 hour and 45 minutes, it's rather short for an Indian movie, especially for one that covers a lot of ground. But I felt that it really did succeed in bringing these characters as well as the time period to life.
I couldn't agree more. I actually had a problem with the right feel for the atmosphere at the beginning. It just didn't feel like the 1970s for me, more like the 80s or 90s, but it got better and I didn't really think about it later on. What I could feel from the very beginning is the progressiveness of this movie. I mean, it's almost 20 years old by now, but it still feels fresh and young, and a big reason for that is the narrative style that you just talked about.
The movie consists of many smaller scenes, as if we only get some brief snippets of the lives of these three struggling characters, and yet it's enough to get the bigger picture. And that's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, at the beginning of the movie there is a short text roll, or whatever you call it, and it states that the story takes place in a time where India was being pulled in 1,000 directions. And I could feel that through these snippets that display all the struggles and different beliefs and ideas.
Siddharth, Vikram, Geeta, each one of them has a distinct personality and several layers to it. And they can also be very flawed, they feel very real. Vikram is probably our central protagonist. He kind of symbolizes the corruption that took hold in India in the 70s. And when you look at the several social issues that are depicted here, things might not have changed that much.
The police as the arm of the oppressor, the old caste system, the gap between the rich and the poor, especially in rural areas that feel totally alienated, and the arrogance that comes with the money.
I really loved how fascinating and bold and sometimes also funny some of the scenes are in this movie. For example, this whole sequence in which Vikram is at that former palace that they want to turn into a hotel. A scene that definitely displays this arrogance that you just mentioned. I also like the very direct language, like when they talked about cutting off the balls and stuff.
Yes, it's great how the characters personify or embody these different ways of life, the different ideals and moral concepts. Also in contrast to their fathers, for example. You get this feeling of the rebellion of the youth, of this new generation who feels the need to change something. It's done with so much detail that this is really a movie that's probably getting better when you watch it a second or even a third time.
If only for the great performances. At first, K.K. Menon did appear too old to me to pass as a student, but since there are several jumps in time, it didn't bother me later on. Although he looked even younger at the end of the movie somehow.
That's true. Shaini Ahuja, who wrecked his career in 2009, 10 or 11 because he was sentenced to 7 years in prison for raping his housemate, is actually pretty good as Vikram. It was his feature film debut. He's perfectly cast as this sly and smug fixer, and Chitrangada Singh is also great as Geeta.
She's so convincing as this torn woman who, deep in her heart, knows what she wants and just does it.
Do we need to talk about the ending? I think we don't. It's harrowing in parts, but also kind of comforting in a way. It feels like the quiet after the storm, where all these people have to think about what's left and what's important.
Yeah, and I think something that Siddharth says at the end summarizes everything quite well. He goes to London to study medicine and writes a letter to Geeta saying, "I hope the mysteries of the human body will be less confusing." With that, he obviously refers to the revolution, which he quit at that point.
And while the movie itself isn't confusing, it definitely does a fantastic job in showing us the confusion in those times, by making us a part of them through these fascinating characters. So what would we say in German about Hazaaron Khwaishein Aisi?
Hazaaron Khwaishein Aisi ist ein wirklich toller Film. Das fein strukturierte Narrativ, das uns anhand dreier fantastisch ausgearbeiteter Charaktere eine ganze Dekade voller politischer Zerwürfnisse und Korruption, aber auch voller Freundschaft und Liebe zusammenfasst, ist außergewöhnlich und mutig. I give Hazaaron Khwaishein Aisi 8 out of 10. It's more like 7.8, but I don't do that.
For me, it's also 8 out of 10. It's more like 8.2, but I don't do that either.
Can you give me a job in your hotel?
Did you know that this movie was originally supposed to be called Twist with Destiny? A play on Nehru's famous speech that he gave on August 15, 1947, where he talked about the tryst with destiny.
Didn't know that. So, what are your thoughts about Hazaaron Khwaishein Aisi? Leave a comment. You can hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd and also on Patreon, simply at the Jimmy Cage.
And you can hit me up on Twitter at the Buddymeister.
And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, whatever you like.
And make sure you hit that bell for all we have to tell.